Welcome to the Voice of All Things. This is our discussion of chapter 993, The Dream of Guano. We're releasing the chapter review a little late because we released something else very exciting earlier, a podcast that we're doing in conjunction with some of the other small YouTubers who also focus on One Piece content. So if you want to see it, it's a really awesome video. We talk about the different deaths in One Piece and what we think of Oda's style of writing when it comes to death. But that's not what you're here for right now. You're here to hear about chapter 993, The Dream of Guano. As I said, we start off with one of the most exciting cover pages in a long time because we are getting an answer to a long-standing mystery of One Piece. Who will Lola marry? And apparently, it's Cody. Now, we've predicted this before, but it's good to finally get confirmation. And with this, it seems like our cover arc of Beige and his family is drawing to a close. I would stake money on the fact that there's probably only one or two left, perhaps ones that will hopefully show us where Beige intends to go next with his newly extended family. It is of note that the Risky brothers are there too, likely indicating that Lola's crew will be merging with the Tank Pirates. Of course, the question still remains, why Lola returned to the New World at all? That's something that I've wondered for a long time. Since last we saw her back in Thriller Bark, she was heading toward the Grand Line. She wanted to get out of the New World. Now, we don't really know where she was going then either, but it's interesting to see that she came back to Dressrosa for some reason. I wonder if we'll get clarification on that. Honestly, I'm not sure we ever will. Of course, this now brings up the interesting question of what will be the next cover arc? Of course, it's very likely that Wano is nowhere near done, so the next cover arc will take place before the arc is up, which means the next cover arc will not feature a Wano character. So, here are my theories about what it might be about. We already have the Tank Pirates, which are kind of the leftovers from Whole Cake Island arc. So I doubt we're going to get a Whole Cake Island arc cover story. If we do though, it will probably be one of the following three characters. Either Caesar, Katakuri, or personally who I think it will be, Pudding. Now I say this because most of the people who featured heavily in Whole Cake Island are either too small of characters to be recognizable by the average One Piece viewer, or are currently in Wano with the battle going on, or outside of Wano being flipped over in a boat repeatedly. The exceptions being the three that I listed. Because honestly, how many people are really going to remember Aladdin or Dulce? Nobody. Well, me, and probably most of you guys if you came here, but most of the readers probably won't. So my theory is Pudding. I think we might get a chance to see Pudding doing something very interesting, as where her story's going is very up in the air at the moment, and I'd love to see that. I'm sure most of you would too. Now, if it's not someone from Whole Cake Island, which I still am pretty sure it's not going to be, could it be someone from Zhao? Probably not. It probably won't be someone from Zhao, as most of the characters from Zhao are also in Wano, and it probably won't be someone from Dressrosa, as we've learned most of their fates in recent stories or cover arcs, aside from Doflamingo's pirate crew. Now, since Dressrosa is a mirror of Alabasta, it's entirely possible that we'll get to see some sort of prison breakout featuring some of the smaller members of Doflamingo's crew, just like we saw with the members of Brokeworks, which I think would be a very exciting continuation of the parallels between the two arcs. However, once again, that is not my first choice, either in preference or in actual theory of what will be the next cover arc. I think the next cover arc will actually be what is happening with one or all of the 7 warlords who are currently being hunted down by the Marines. Alright, but that's enough about the cover page. Let's move on to the actual first page of the manga chapter today. We step away from the fierce battle raging on to take a look at the Flower Capital, where we see a party raging on. Of course, we know all about the Fire Festival, and that's the reason this night was chosen to be the attack, but we haven't gotten to look back at the citizens of Wano and what they're doing. And we see a very interesting scene playing out. Personally, I'm very surprised that they are allowed to have an Odin float at all, since the current circumstances in Wano. Now, I've noticed some people online commenting that they think it's unrealistic that the people would be so hopeful for Odin's retainers to return and try to avenge them. However, I really don't think so. While we have seen scenes of the children of Wano being twisted to believe that Orochi's way of ruling is right, most of the adults were alive, not only for Odin's execution, but also to see the steady decline of the Wano country into the miserable state it is today, if they aren't actually one of the people on the outskirts who are suffering so heavily. Plus, apparently they're not allowed to drink alcohol most of the year, and I think most people know that's not fun. So honestly, personally, I think that the way the citizens of Wano are reacting to the situation, the kinds of comments they're giving, are entirely realistic and fit in with the narrative we've been given so far. Now, while I was reading this, I tried to see if I could identify some of the side characters here from past panels, and I know most of these faces are familiar, but I could not remember where they were from, aside from, of course, the carpenter who Frankie worked for a time. Now, that was largely because I was distracted trying to figure out something later, which I'll talk about in a minute. But aside from headhunting for a few of the side characters that we might be able to see in other chapters of the manga, there really isn't a lot more going on in the Fire Festival. And in fact, we all want to talk about what's going on in the battle anyway. Starting off, we get confirmation of another theory that I had, that these bullets that Queen was firing were neither sea stone nor the zombie bullets we saw earlier in the Udon prison. In fact, these are a different kind of zombie bullets, which apparently turn you into some sort of ice monster. I knew Queen had more up his sleeve than that, and these ones seem especially ferocious. Now, this is what I was spending all my time trying to do. I was trying to see if I could identify from past chapters the samurai who are currently being affected by this, because the first one we see getting affected by this really has the body shape of someone very familiar looking. I wasn't able to put my finger on it. For a while, I thought it might have been the guy with the He-Man hair, but looking back at him, I think this is a different character. But if you guys know who this guy or the guy in the next page who's being turned into one of these monsters is from previous panels, please let me know down in the comments, because it's driving me nuts. Also, it's interesting to note that currently Drake, Zoro, Robin, and Chopper are all down here having to face these creatures. So it's going to be very interesting how the four of them handle this situation. Also, it's hard to tell now who's actually on what side sometimes, because obviously most of the samurai have their samurai garb, but some of them might be still wearing the disguises Kinemon gave them, so I'm not sure if this attack that Queen unleashed is also affecting the beast pirates, or if it's just the in-disguise samurai. It might be both. But then we get to see Luffy charging upstairs, and we get our first look at the map of the area. Of course, Oda always likes to add this little map to show us where all of the action's happening, and it is usually very helpful, though I actually hadn't even considered what the interior of this building looked like until now. So this is also our first glimpse at the overall structure and layout of Kaido's fortress, which is also nice to see. And we get a nice little scene with Sanji and Luffy trying to make their way up. Sanji trying to tell Luffy he needs to conserve his strength for the battle ahead, which really shows how seriously the Straw Hats are taking this fight, unlike the earlier ones where they seemed sort of like they were just laughing through attacking. Like when they got to the gate, or at earlier stages of this battle, they really seemed a little more carefree, but at this point, I think a lot of them are starting to take it very serious, seeing how much danger the situation actually presents. And then we get to see one of my new favorite smile fruit users, which is Briscola, someone who apparently is one of the more gifted gifters, as his body does not seem to have been transformed in any way aside from the fact that he can turn his hand into a gorilla at will. So much like Sheep's Head, or Sheepsheed as I call him, he seems to have a lot more control over his devil fruit power, unlike the other unfortunate smile users. When Briscola is introduced, we also see a couple of other interesting looking fruit users behind him, but they're so small it's really hard to tell what they are. The following scene seems to be an intentional gag, not quite a gag, but an intentional joke by Oda, making fun of all of the people who try to say who's actually the new monster trio. Is it still Sanji in there, or is it Jinbei in there? Because we see Jinbei stepping in and Luffy being excited by him instead of Sanji, as Jinbei tries to help Luffy conserve his strength. And this whole interaction is just hilarious. I really can't do it justice in describing it. It just is really funny to see the three of them having this little dynamic here, with Sanji acting all jealous and trying to provoke a fight like he does with Zoro, but then Jinbei just being like, oh, sorry. It's just really funny, and it makes me really love the fact that Jinbei is on the crew now. Meanwhile, while the two of them debate this, Luffy is going off and doing exactly what they're trying to prevent. So once again, more hilarious antics. Meanwhile, we get a glimpse at a small cat with an eye paper on its face. I don't know how else to describe this, but this really does add to the mystery surrounding Bao Huang and the other people with eyes over their face, because apparently she can see through this eye on the cat. I'm very interested to see what this is going to entail later on, especially because this is apparently not a devil fruit ability, since we know that Bao Huang already has a smile. Unless you can eat a smile and a devil fruit because they work differently. Or this is something else entirely, and we'll get to learn more about that later on. Either way, very mysterious, very exciting. And then we get to see King ordering the execution of Momo, which the next page starts to cover. Shinobu is apparently taken out. I mean, obviously she's not dead, but she seems to be down for the count with all the damage she's taken. And right before she's finished off along with Momo by a man whose entire lower half is a turtle, rendering his entire smile fruit basically useless, and actually an enormous weakness because he's probably slower now, Yamato steps in, and perhaps for the first time, Momo is convinced she's on his side. Then we get to see a bunch of gifters we've actually seen before in a panel, with them all being labeled as the armored division of the Animal Kingdom pirates. Now obviously we haven't seen all of these before. The Crab Girl, the Rhino Man, they're new, but some of the others are familiar faces. And then we see Sasaki riding on top of them. Perhaps these are his old crew members, but perhaps he's also part of the armored division, which some people have been guessing means he may have an Ankylosaurus fruit, which would be exciting to see. It's possible we'll get to have a Sasaki versus Yamato matchup, which is pretty cool to have a matchup for her considering she has just been introduced, or he, or, well, Yamato. You know what I mean. Then we get to the epic finale of the chapter. We get a look back up on the Skull Dome where Kaido is laying on the ground. The Scabbards are preparing to finish him off, but he really isn't down for the count. He slowly rises from the ground and unleashes a final devastating attack. Well, not final, I'm sure there's a lot more to this battle, but an extremely devastating attack, after declaring them to be far too weak to stand up to Odin's legacy. And Kiku loses an arm. At first, it was a little hard to tell what was happening here, but on careful inspection, she has apparently lost her entire arm up to the shoulder and her sword. So Kiku is almost certainly down for the count, our first loss from the Scabbards. Does this mean she's dead? Absolutely not. This is One Piece. But what this means going forward has some very exciting implications, which I honestly am not even going to begin to guess at. All I know is that this is starting to take a very, very dark turn. And next week, we're going to see what happens.
Kaido, Kaido. Hey there.
Don't leave without subbing.
Hey there.
Don't leave without liking.
Hey there.
Don't forget to comment. Hit the bell, hit the bell, hit the bell.